Okay. Well, if anything comes up between now and Thursday, I would certainly say, get in contact with me, whether that's through an email or coming by the office, so I can help you as you work through that. So let's pick up then, again, with looking at some of the material that we've been talking about. We're in the middle of looking at different types of Judaism. And the three major ones we talked about in the video were Orthodox Judaism, Reform Judaism, and Conservative Judaism. So, especially for those of you that have watched the videos, completed your notes, tell me something about Orthodox Judaism. What makes Orthodox Judaism unique from the other Judaism?
They have a very strict focus on rabbinical law and like dress codes and so on. Okay,
very strict focus on rabbinical law, which includes things like how you dress, what you should eat. What else is something that makes Orthodox Judaism unique?
They're all about preserving Jewish traditions, so they do their services in Hebrew, and all their prayers are in Hebrew and such.
Yeah, so the mindset of Orthodox Jews is on preservation of tradition. In the mindset, it is kind of continuing to do as it's always been done, although certainly there would be a recognition that Moses did not wear a yarmulke, right, and some of the other things that a lot of Jews practice, but Orthodox Jews practice. But within Orthodox Judaism is that notion of the preservation of tradition, both the written tradition of the Torah and the oral tradition of other teachers and rabbis. Reform Judaism. Encapsulate for me what Reform Judaism is about. We'll talk a little bit about it in the past couple minutes. What does Judaism look like for Reform Jews?
They see it more as a progressive movement. They think that it needs to change over time as society develops. It also needs to develop to better conform and fit to bringing people from society to their religious state.
Yeah, that's a good way. Right there in the name of it, right? Reform suggests the need for this continual change and adaptation, the idea of it being a progressive religion. And so, as we saw on the Pittsburgh platform, right, there are things that can be changed, can be adapted. The third group that we looked at was Conservative Judaism. Now, right away from the names, right, Reform Judaism trying to bring reform, Conservative Judaism trying to conserve, but what is it that makes Conservative Judaism different from Orthodox Judaism? How would you say Conservative Judaism is different?
Well, Conservative Judaism was a split from Orthodox Judaism.
Okay.
And so, what I took from the video was that the big traditions were kept, such as the order of worship and things of that nature were kept, but some of the more progressive things that Reform Judaism takes, such as dress and things like that, they kind of thrown away with the old traditions and adapted to the new. So around the middle.
Yeah, so Conservative Judaism wants to hold on to some of those traditions, but feels that there's the Conservative Jews feel that there are some things that can be changed. Right? There are some things that should not be changed, and there are some things that can be changed. So again, that kind of middle path between Reform and Orthodox. I want to talk about two other expressions of Judaism that are historically important. One is the development of what we might call secular Judaism. Now, this would include atheist Jews, right? Those Jews that want to hold on to a Jewish identity, right? Jewish culturally, but it would include other people as well. People who might not necessarily be atheistic, but who are not as concerned in being religious. So again, it would certainly include atheistic Jews. And so some scholars have referred to this distinction as the difference between Judaism and Yiddishkeit. Yiddishkeit might translate something like Jewishness. And so essentially you have this desire to identify as a Jew, but you are not religious. Now, you might practice some of the holidays, like we'll talk about in a little bit, but you're not going to synagogue regularly. You're not concerned about saying the prayers, again, either from an atheistic standpoint or simply from someone who doesn't care about religion. But there's still that desire to be ethnically Jewish. And so the idea is more about that identity, that cultural identity, that ethnic identity, than it is about holding on to a particular religion, which kind of brings us back to the very beginning when we were talking about Judaism, is being a Jew an ethnicity, or is it a religion? Well, or is it religious? Well, again, it would depend on who you ask. But for many secular Jews, there is still that desire to connect with other Jews, and so they've developed organizations like the Nagarit, which means Sons of the Covenant. It's often been referred to as the secular synagogue. Right? So it's not religious ceremonies that are done there, but there is that idea of community, right? More of a fraternal order or something like that. The last type of Judaism I want to talk about is kind of, a mixture of secular Judaism as well as religious Judaism, although in many respects it looks at itself, and the people involved in it look at themselves as religious, and that is Reconstructionist Judaism. Reconstructionist Judaism was started by a man named Mordecai Kaplan. Kaplan was born in Lithuania and early in his life immigrated to the United States. His family, and so Kaplan himself, was Orthodox. And so a lot of his early life was shaped by Orthodox Judaism. But eventually he began to believe that traditional Judaism and modern life, modern culture, could not be reconciled together. Eventually he decided to err on the side of modern life than on traditional Judaism. He would write in his diary, and this is a quote, "Orthodoxy is the bane of Judaism." Right? So the idea of the Orthodox mindset being antagonistic to Judaism. Quote, "The only hope is in the introduction of radical and sweeping changes." Right? So Kaplan is wanting to see massive changes happen. He wants to, as we see here in the name, completely reconstruct Judaism. It's not reforming Judaism. It's not conserving Judaism. It's reconstructing it. Ultimately, Kaplan argued that Jews needed to experience a new religious realism. Jews had to seriously engage modern life and make appropriate changes. In some ways, it sounds like Reform Judaism, in the sense that Reform Jews were trying to argue the same kind of things, that a lot of the aspects of orthodoxy, food laws, Orthodox dress, often made Jews separate from the culture, the countries around them. Something similar is what Kaplan's arguing, but he wants to go even further than what Reform Jews were doing. Judaism, he argued, should be historic and progressive. Again, it sounds like Reform Judaism. It sounds, to some extent, like conservative Judaism. But Kaplan had distinct ideas about how this historic, progressive Judaism, this new religious realism, was going to take. Specifically, he was open to naturalizing Judaism. Even Reformed Jews looked at Judaism supernaturally. There was supernatural out there. But for Kaplan, the focus of Judaism should be on the Jewish people, not God. And so the center of Judaism was on the people. And this is reflected in several of the beliefs that Kaplan and Reconstructionist Jews promoted. First of all, Kaplan denied the existence of the supernatural. Supernatural conceptions, Kaplan felt, were proved by science to be absurd. Again, there's obviously a question there, but this is where Kaplan's coming from. So instead, he wanted to hold on to the name of God, the phrase of God, because of the power of that word. But God must be grounded in the human experience. This is a natural deity. To believe in God for Kaplan is to believe in the meaningfulness of human life. Right? God is the process or power within human beings. There's the need for God, the term God, because human beings have a need, said Kaplan, to have an authority outside themselves. But God should be considered more of as power. Now, he's not talking about something like a supernatural power, this kind of impersonal force, right, which would still be against Kaplan's views. But he's talking more of the power that human beings have. So if God doesn't exist, you follow that with the fact that the Jews are not the chosen people. Again, this is Kaplan talking. Kaplan is a Jew. If God doesn't exist to do the choosing, then the Jews are not the chosen people. And in fact, Kaplan went so far to say that a majority of the problems that the Jews had faced in their existence had come from this notion of Jewish chosenness. Much like Reformed Jews, Kaplan also argued that there were certain beliefs and ideas that needed to be eliminated. But the key factor there is contemporary modern beliefs, specifically science for Kaplan. And so if something wasn't compatible with modern understanding within Judaism, it was the one to go. Not reconceptualizing scientific statements, but eliminating those beliefs from Judaism. Other aspects of Judaism, Kaplan didn't want to see eliminated. Instead, he wanted to see them changed. Essentially, if a practice or ceremony could be shaped or altered in a way that reflected modern life, then it could be kept. But if it couldn't be reshaped, it should be discarded. So something like the Sabbath. Now traditionally, the Sabbath was focused on the creation of the world by God. And so it was focused on issues related to the supernatural in relationship to the natural. Right? So God created the world in 6 days, and on the seventh he rested. And so Jews were to work 6 days and rest on the seventh. It was about the covenant that God and his people had. Right? Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Well, of course, in Kaplan's mind, if God doesn't exist, none of those things are true. So do we just eliminate the Sabbath? Well, Kaplan said no. Instead, we need to recognize that the celebration of the Sabbath is important. That it recognizes the meaningfulness of human life and human creativity. And so instead of focusing on the creativity of God, you focus on the creativity of human beings and the need for rest. What about Passover? Within Passover, traditionally, very, very supernaturalistic occurrence, right? God sends the destroying angel to kill the firstborn on every house that doesn't bear the blood of the lamb on its lintel. But Kaplan felt that this could be changed as well. Instead of the focus on the supernatural deliverance of the Exodus, Passover could be a time for Jews to remind themselves that they need to help oppressed people everywhere. So instead of being a focus on Jewish chosenness, it was a demand for human rights, to be active in promoting human freedom. But despite all the things that Kaplan wants to get rid of, he still wants to talk about the importance of being Jewish, the importance of focusing on Jewish civilization. Not in the sense of we Jews are the chosen people and so we're better than all the other peoples in the world, but instead to say, let us look at the things Jews have done and embrace everything Jewish, the land, the history, the language, the literature, the art. Hold on to those things. Recognize how useful and important these things have been in the lives of the Jews. But again, not in any sort of way that is going to position Jews as somehow being higher than others. So Jews are unique people for Kaplan, but they are not special in the sense of any sort of divine way. What questions do you have about either Reconstructionist Jews or secular Judaism, places where I need to clarify? If not, I want to move from talking about different types of Judaism. We'll eventually, in a few minutes, talk about Jewish practice, but before we get there, we do have to talk about a very important historical event within Judaism that had, or among Jews, but it had a profound effect on Judaism and Jews.